privilege of seeing Dr. Dickey as a keynote speaker locally in DC, all the way in California. He is very popular in the conference scene. You can follow him on Twitter. But I will tell you that Dr. Dickey is a nationally recognized authority on curriculum, instruction, organizational development, and school administration. Unparalleled levels of student achievement and school improvement distinguished Dr. Dickey, distinguished 20-year career in his educational leadership. Dr. Dickey has served students and families as a teacher, assistant principal, regional superintendent, chief academic officer, and chief schools officer. He's published 35 core content textbooks and professional books on school improvement. Dr. Dickey currently supports superintendents in school districts in more than 24 states. If you follow him on Twitter, you'll see him traveling the nation in all different school districts, most especially recently. Been all over the place, so we were very fortunate to secure him here in Washington County. He is right now Chief Executive Officer of Educational Epiphany, a company that he founded in 2008. And so without any further ado, I'm going to pass the mic over to Dr. Dickey.
Good morning, everybody. That's an awfully flashy picture. It kind of makes me nervous when I see it. Like, wow, I have to get up and say something worthwhile. So here we go. All right. Let me just first say that I'd like to thank you, Dr. Boyd Michael, for an opportunity to come and share with you all today. Thank you, Laura, to my good friend that I met. And was it MGM Grant? At the conference, MGM Grant, I met you in California. I met you in California, okay. I started out in a very tough situation as a little person myself. So as a little person, I grew up in lack. I grew up in want. I grew up in a tough community. And I grew up in a place that really didn't value education. For some reason, I had a spark, and that spark was initiated by my teachers who put books in my hands when I was a little person. And it's maybe one of the reasons why I've written 35 books of my own, because I know books are the gateway to actually having a choice-filled life. And so our children are counting upon us as public educators to give them access to a schooling experience that gives them the opportunity to live a life that's characterized by making their own choices, rather than someone else making their choices for them. And so I want you to know that I flew in last night to DC from Little Rock, Arkansas, where I was supporting a group of schools. And each of the schools that I supported there last year, their data is coming in from this past May's end of course and end of grade assessments. And every school that I worked with personally flew back and forth to Little Rock, from DC to Little Rock, or wherever I was working, California to Little Rock, Texas to Little Rock. Each of those schools broke a record in student outcomes. So the lowest performing high school had the most significant gains in the state of Arkansas. And so when it's filled with children, sometimes folks think they can't do it, but they did it. So it's filled with the subgroups that we worry about. That building is filled with those subgroups. And they demonstrated the most significant gains overall, but also particularly in English and mathematics. They got 3 records in 1 year. Overall, and English, and mathematics. And the content that helped them to do that is what I'm going to be sharing with you today, all right? So I wrote it inside of my book some things that I want to talk to you about before I jump into the content. Number 1, have you ever been to professional development and 10 minutes in you wanted to find a sharp object and do yourself harm with it? This is not that. I guarantee you that this would be a whole lot better than that. So if you don't have something to write on, you're probably going to want to get something to write on, because I'm going to, once I get going, I'm like that little engine that could. Once I get going, I'm going to be speaking at 100 miles an hour. And I'm going to be dropping some good nuggets on you this morning that I think will be helpful to you, to help you to push kids forward. One of my best experiences that I remember as a site-based leader was leading a secondary school here in the state of Maryland. Most of my educational career I spent here in the state of Maryland. And that was in Howard County. I inherited the lowest performing middle school in the district. When I got there, 9% of our students with special, you serve any children with special needs? You serve any students with special needs? 9% of my special needs population were proficient on the Maryland School Assessment. 9. After 1 year, we demonstrated the most significant gains, not just for our students with special needs, but we demonstrated the most significant gains out of all 3,225 schools in the state of Maryland. So my special education population went from 9% proficient in 1 year to 69% proficient the next year. And I'll show you what we did to make that happen. My English language learners, we have any English language learners in Washington County? When I inherited them, they performed 24% of them were proficient on the Maryland School Assessment. After 1 year, they jumped to 79% proficient. When I left that building, every student group was near 100% proficient or advanced. So this conversation is not about only bubble kids or kids who are down at the bottom of the performance spectrum. This conversation is about your highly able and gifted kids. We don't want to bore them to death either. And so this is about what John F. Kennedy said, a rising tide will lift every boat. So we don't worry about the assessment. We worry about giving kids access to high quality instruction, and then the assessment takes care of itself. The PARCC assessment will take care of itself if we guarantee that children have access to instruction of the highest quality. Now what makes instruction, what qualifies instruction to be of the highest quality? It's standards driven. What does that mean, it's standards driven? If kids are going to take a PARCC assessment, which is standards driven, don't they every day deserve access to performance-based instruction? If the assessment is performance-based, should not their instruction that they receive daily be also performance-based? I'm going to show you how to make that happen with them. Okay, and the final thing I want to talk to you about is this, and I use it as a springboard for our conversation this morning. What are the most significant impediments? So this is an opportunity for you to talk back to me. What are the most significant impediments to student achievement, whether it be overall or for certain groups of students? What's holding kids back from getting to proficiency and beyond? Attendance. They got to be in the seat to get access to the high quality education. What else? Motivation. So sometimes, and I'm not speaking to myself, folks are saying stuff and I'm repeating, okay? Motivation. So sometimes children come to you without being intrinsically motivated to learn. And we have to hold out carrots in front of them through initiatives like PBIS, Positive Behavior Interventions and Support, to create a token economy to get them to, want to engage in the instruction, right? What else holds kids back? Okay, so the lack of high quality instruction. So, there are no two snowflakes alike, is that right? So think about teachers who are in your building. Would you want all of them to teach your own offspring? Heck to the no. And so sometimes, you said it, passion is not enough. People will tell you, teachers will tell you, I have passion for kids, but you don't know the standards. I have a passion for teaching and learning, but you don't come to work on time. I have a passion for children, but your behavior is cancerous to your department and to your grade level. So passion won't do it. There has to be knowledge of the content. And there has to be an ability to deliver it. You ever meet someone who's really smart that can't deliver the content? They know it. They know chemistry like nobody's business. But put them in front of 25 kids and see what happens. A catastrophe. Okay, what else? I thought I was going to talk to real people when I drove down here this morning. Okay, yeah. Low expectations. So look, I come to you. Low expectations, I call them in this book that you're going to get a copy of. This is my 35th book. You're going to get a copy of it. But you're going to get a better copy than I have in my hand. I sent it to a designer. Yeah, it's torn and tattered. But I sent it to a designer to make it even better. So you're going to get a copy of it really soon. But the first chapter of the book is about low expectations. And there are people who are teaching your children who don't think your children can achieve at high levels. But you'll never know because they may not tell you. They may not say, I think those kids, I don't know about these kids, or, from that side of town or that zip code. But guess what? Low performance is not about the zip code, it's about the instruction in the zip code. Underperformance is not about the zip code kids come from. It's about the instruction they receive in the zip code they come from. And carbon monoxide, I refer to it in this text, carbon monoxide, getting ahead of myself. Low expectations I refer to in this text as carbon monoxide. because it's silent. And so it kills student ability silently. And so you have to root it out. And in this text, I talk about how you root out low expectations. What else holds kids back from achieving at high levels? Traumatic experiences. So I myself grew up and I saw a bunch of traumatic things, right? And so those impacted my ability to be available for learning. And so some kids have to be loved to hold it, the wholeness before we can even make sure that they're available for learning. And teachers, we're responsible for that. Administrators, we're responsible for that. That is not simply the responsibility of the guidance counselor. It's everybody on the bench for that kid, supporting them so they can be available for learning completely. Yes, ma'am?
Limited background knowledge and
Oh,
experience.
oh yeah. So kids come with gaps, yes? Do you serve any kids who read below grade level? How many of you do? Raise your hand. If you serve children who read below grade level, okay. How long are we going to admire that problem? What are we going to do to fix it? And so that's what we're going to talk about today, what we can do to resolve that issue. Because guess what? They're coming below grade level. John Dewey, 1911, referred to most of what you listed as impediments to student outcomes as static factors. He called them static, which means there's nothing you can do about it. They're coming reading below grade level. But I believe that there is something that is greater than all the things that are working against improvements in student outcomes, and I refer to them, sir, as dynamic factors, as single dynamic factors. What's greater than all the negative things that are working against improvements in student outcomes that we can't control? What's greater than all of them combined? Teacher knowledge of the content. Teacher knowledge of the content. So as an organization, let me tell you what, look, I went from making a school better to making a group of schools better as a regional sup to making 200 schools better as the chief academic officer of the school district of Philadelphia to making states better in my current role as the CEO of Educational Epiphany. So last year, we took all 118 schools off the state's takeover list in the state of Georgia in Atlanta Public Schools. All of them in 1 year came off the list. And all they put in place were these 4 practices that I'm going to share with you this morning. Each day I'm getting phone calls from clients that I'm working with across the country, and they're saying to me, we're off the list, we came off the list, we demonstrated double-digit gains in every content area for every student group. I'm going to show you how to do that. You ready? All right, put on your seatbelt. Here I go. So I'm referring to this conversation today as a conversation about the integrated approach. So what do I mean by integrated approach? Instruction, teaching, and learning was never designed to have walls up between and among content areas. It was designed for, initially, it was designed for public education to be without walls, so to say. But we put up walls between content areas, and guess what? As secondary folks, we're more inclined to put up a wall. I'm secondary, so I can talk about us. I'm in the group. And, matter of fact, secondary teachers take on the personalities of the children that they serve. You don't believe it? Oh, you believe it, because you're with them every day in that building. So let me tell you. Elementary, they take on the personality of the children they serve. Elementary folks, they'll try anything. Elementary teachers will try anything, just like elementary kids will eat dirt. They'll try anything. Right? Middle school folks, they take on the personality of the kids that they serve. Depending on what day it is and what mood you find them in. Children, the adults act just like the children. They're emotional. They're up and down. And high school folks, what do we like? We take on the personality of the children we serve. And what are high school kids like? They know everything. They have big britches. They're starting to drive. And so it's very difficult to take a content area expert and say to them, let me in, so that I can help you to be of better service to children. All right? So, read this and tell me what you think about it. I'm going to start philosophical, but I'm going to get technical in a second. I'm going to start, epistemological, but I'm going to get concrete in a second. Is this true? You don't have a plan, secondary folks, for literacy development. You don't have a plan for school improvement. I want you to think about this in the context of your school improvement plan that you're getting ready to work on. If literacy is not embedded in it, children won't get better. Outcomes won't get better, okay? I don't mean to be pessimistic. So, here's some outcomes. We're going going to redefine literacy in the context of common instructional knowledge, language, and tools. Let me pause here for a quick second. You've been hearing this for as long as you've been in public education. We need to align curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Have you not heard that? My buddy just said it. But for many, many years, it has stayed misaligned. You know why? Because I don't think as a group, public education in general, we know what we mean when we say we need to align curriculum, instruction, and assessment. So I've done some work around what that means. And I really believe that it means that we have to align our knowledge of the expectations of the standards with the language that we use of every tier of the organization, from the teacher's classroom, which is the unit of change. The classroom is the unit of change. From the classroom all the way up to the superintendent's office, what language do we use that is common around the expectations of the standards? Because I will tell you this, if I bring all of your English teachers in the room and I say to them across your district, tell me what analyze means. As many people as I have in that room, I will get that many different definitions for analyze, and that's problematic for children. Why is that problematic for children? Because as they go from one grade or one content area to the next, they're going to see analyze. They're going to see analyze on the PARC assessment. And they've heard 13 different definitions of what it means to analyze. But there is an operational definition for analyze. It means to separate material into its constituent parts or elements. There is one definition for summary. It is a brief statement that contains the essential ideas of a longer passage. There is one definition for equation. It's a mathematical statement that establishes equivalency. And so kids go from one grade to the next, to the next, to the next, and they become instructionally schizophrenic because there is no common instructional language around the knowledge. Do y'all hear me? And then, what do you need after you have common instructional knowledge and language? You need common instructional tools. That means what they need to put in their hands to get the job done, what teachers need access to get the job done. And guess what? Public education has become over-programmatized. We think that a program is going to help us to get to improve student outcomes. It's not a program. It's your knowledge of the standard so that when you look at the program, you can use it better. Y'all with me? Y'all quiet on me? Are y'all Methodist or something? Okay. Now, Episcopalian, okay, all right. Now, we're also going to talk about, now, what does it mean? This is the second large bullet point. We're also going to talk about what it means to have literacy embedded into your instructional program. Now, secondary folks, I was successful as a principal and beyond because I paid attention to the fact that my kids didn't read on grade level. And I did something about it on a daily basis for all kids, and then I did something special for certain kids. So I'm going to show you out of the knowledge base that I pulled on to know what to do for kids. And then third here, we're going to examine a results-driven approach, which are a finite set of practices that I believe that if you put in place, children will do well automatically and in that year. People say, oh, it takes 5 years to improve a school. It does not. Well, we're going to work on behavior for year one. Mistake. So there has to be a simultaneous pathway. At the same time you're addressing behavior or other issues like attendance, at the same time you're addressing the quality of instruction that children are getting. And my principal said to me when I was an assistant principal, I thought that lady was the devil. That's what she said to me. She said, I was AP, she was a seasoned principal on her way to retirement. She said, your office is for after school. And you know what that built in me? What Elliot Eisner said in 1979 in Educational Imagination. It built a capacity in me around the content. Because I was always in classrooms, and even though my background was in one content area, over time, I knew all 4 of the core content areas. I learned content areas that weren't my background because she said, I want to see you in classrooms. She was mean, y'all. But she meant well, and I learned the content from the content areas so that I could be a resource to the teachers. Anyone ever tell you, we have materials that are aligned to the state standards from Maryland. We have materials where they're aligned. You ever heard that? Aligned. That word aligned is code word for something. They are aligning. But I don't know that if I don't know the content really well. I don't know if the resources are aligned. Okay, jump in. So what is literacy? I believe that literacy is one's ability to decode fluently. There are children sitting in your building, or coming to your building in the next few months, who cannot decode fluently. That means just call out the words on the page. Like say the words, pronounce the words, know the phonemes, know the graphemes, right? But also literacy is also about creating meaning as you read. So it's not just enough to call out the words on the page. You want your children to be able to understand the words on the page. So many of the children in your building who read below grade level, because we think, okay, we're going to improve lexile by just giving kids a book to read. There's more to it than that. So we give them a book to read with a focus on their ability to create meaning as they decode. Decode, call out the words. Create meaning, understand the words you call out. Many of your children who appear to be reading below grade level, they don't read below grade level, Washington County. They do not read below grade level. They create meaning below grade level. Which means they can say the word, but they don't have a clue what the word means. The human brain has to understand 95% of the words that it encounters when it sees them in order to be able to create meaning with the text. So we have kids reading text all the time. And they skip over so many words that they don't understand, and then we ask them to do something more cognitively demanding with that text, but they skipped over too many words. And so how do we ensure that children understand 95% of the words that they encounter while they're reading? Because that's the only way you're going to improve PARCC scores, is if they understand the words, so when they get the question about the words that they read, they can answer the question. And the other part of literacy, redefined, is the ability to consume informational text, the ability to consume literary text, and then ascend the pyramid of cognitive demand. What does that mean? What does it mean to ascend the pyramid of cognitive demand? Your student groups, your subgroups would do so much better if your teachers understood what I'm getting ready to put on the screen. And here they are. Most instruction for children who've yet to get to mastery or beyond, they're being subjected to instruction that only requires them to remember what they read. Johnny crossed the road. What did Johnny do? Johnny crossed the road. That's the lowest level of question. And unfortunately, the children who perform those, who do not get to mastery, they're more likely to be exposed to instruction that only requires them to remember. The next level of cognitive demand inside of literacy is understanding. So you read a piece of text on Newton's laws of motion. Do you understand the 3 laws of motion? Yeah, you can remember that there are 3, and you can name the 3, but do you have a conceptual understanding of the 3? That's the next level of literacy, is to be able to understand what you read conceptually. Which doesn't come to children by copying a definition from a glossary. But that's happening in some of our classrooms. It comes to a discussion on what is a law and what is motion. Therefore, what is a law of motion? The next level of cognitive demand is applying. Is the instruction that children are receiving every day in your buildings, is it characterized by them using what they remember and using what they understand to apply it to a variety of situations? Or are science classrooms paper and pencil? Or math classrooms paper and pencil? A math classroom that is paper and pencil is tantamount to malpractice. Kids should be touching manipulatives to understand fractions, part-whole relationships. In a science class, children should be touching concepts of gravity, materials related to concepts of gravity, to understand it better. How do you learn something better? You have to touch it. I'm going to teach you how to tie your shoe, but you can't touch your shoelace. That's happening instructionally for some of our children. The third level of cognitive demand is analyzing. So look, here's what I used to say to folks as a principal. I'm either satisfied or I'm not satisfied with your instruction. I'm either pleased with it, I will send my kid to your classroom, my biological to your classroom, or I won't. These things satisfy. These should satisfy us. Or we should be dissatisfied if children aren't getting this experience. Now, what does this mean? What does it mean about analyzing? So look, when kids are reading a piece of text in class, shouldn't they for a moment step back from that text and look at the constituent elements of that text? I'm reading a play. Does anyone ever say to me, what is the play made of? A series of acts? a series of scenes, a series of dialogue, monologues, soliloquies? Should not someone say to kids, you read a poem, what is it made up of? Lines and stanzas, right? Iambic pentameter. I am looking at a plant and an animal cell. I see a mitochondria in both. Folks are just trying to get through the curriculum, but the kids aren't there by the time they get to the curriculum. Folks are trying to cover the curriculum. You ever seen somebody speed up to a red light? You're not thinking genius. So why are we in a hurry? Why are we in a hurry? We're in a hurry to hurry up and teach so we can hurry up and assess so we can just find out that kids needed more time. And so good instruction says, you cannot, I will not be satisfied as the instructional leader in this building if I don't see children getting access to instruction that takes them up that pyramid of cognitive demand. Evaluating. You read a piece of text and you saw some text features. You saw some underlined words. You saw some italicized words. You saw a diagram. I'm talking about a science text. You saw a legend. I'm talking about social studies text. You saw a map, right? Are we asking kids to step back from the map and say for a second, what is the extent to which the author fulfilled his or her purpose for creating that map? Or do you just say, create a map, good job, check, we moved on? Or do they get an opportunity to go up and down that pyramid of cognitive and then finally create it? So because school improvement and district improvement is not simply about giving you some standards and giving you a curriculum related to the standards. It's about implementation of it. This is the implementation conversation. What do you mean implementation? If you read a bunch of stories, should you be able to create an original one? You read a bunch of poems, should you be able to write one? If you looked at a bunch of a pulley system being used in an engineering design, shouldn't you be able to create a pulley system? So good instruction says, okay, I'm a teacher, I'm going to stop talking, I'm not the stage on the stage the entire time. Give kids an opportunity to create something that doesn't exist. Is a summary something that was created? You read a piece of text and you summarize it? That's creating. That's the top of the pyramid of cognitive demand. So let me stop talking for a quick second. This is literacy. Is this experience happening? I'll give you 30 seconds. Are children getting this experience in a systematic way in your building? Talk to someone next to you. Systematic is the answer. Systematic is the caveat. Systematic. I'm going to call you back in 10. Calling you back in 7. Calling you back in 5. Calling you back in 3. Calling you back in 1. Okay, calling you back. What'd you say? Someone said, I said, what'd you say? Someone said immediately, no. Okay. What else? I'll come to that. We'll talk about that in a second. What else? Let me get something else. That's more than one word. What did you say to your shoulder partner? Anybody else? Sometimes it's hit miss. Yes, sir, and I'll come to you.
The best teachers in all our disciplines do this organically.
Yes, sir.
Maybe we as leaders we're so adept at teaching that we don't know all of these steps in a concrete way that will help those that can't make this happen.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. If this were a course, you would get an A for analysis, okay? Okay. So here's what you said, sir. In the app, so remember I said no two snowflakes are alike? So some people are already making this happen. You're right, for kids. Now, what practices can we put in front of folks and then start to have expectations around to make it happen, to manufacture it in other classrooms where it's not happening in a systematic way? That's what I'm going to show you how to do in a second. Yes, ma'am.
We were just saying that we also, we see it happening in pockets, and this automatically made me think about ways we can improve the feedback that we're giving to teachers,
Yes.
common language.
Yeah, so the feedback we give to teachers, look, I have a tool that I'm going to show you at the end of our time together today, if I have time, that makes this happen. But it's not a checklist where you go into a classroom with a clipboard, like, check, you didn't do that, check. It's a set of questions that we want to ask teachers to make them do the thinking. Because let me tell you what happens during the feedback session with a teacher. They shut down because they feel attacked. When our feedback is characterized by a series of declaratives rather than a series of interrogatives, they shut down. They just want to know, did I pass? Am I right? And so I have a set of questions that will generate a conversation around these practices. Okay? Let me move. Okay. So there are two things that have to happen. This is going to feel like I'm talking to elementary folks, but secondary folks, I need you to hear this. And then I'm going to go to these 4 practices that I want to talk to you about. There are 2 things that have to happen inside of your literacy program in your building. Kids have to learn how to read, and kids have to read to learn. You've heard this before. They have to learn how to read. That means there's a science to reading. And then reading to learn is they read in order to learn how to do something else. So let me talk about both of them, and then I'll go to these practices I want to discuss with you today. The first element of learning how to read is phonemic awareness. There are some children in your building who don't know which letters make which sounds. And I know I'm talking to secondary folks, but as a secondary principal, I had to deal with this if I wanted kids to do better academically. There are only 26 letters in the alphabet. Some kids don't know which sounds they make. So our teaching and learning has to be diagnostic, which means we've got to figure out who has this issue, and then it has to be prescriptive. We've got to solve it by giving them a treatment. Okay? Now, the second is phonics, which is, look, there are rules for the sounds that letters make. Phonemic awareness, audible. Phonics, when they hit the paper, what sounds do those letters make? There are some children who are in your building who don't know that the sound is sometimes made by PH and sometimes made by the letter F. There's some children sitting in your classroom who don't know that the S sound is sometimes made by CC, S, CS. Y'all with me? That the, no, that's too much, I'm being dramatic. That the, sound is sometimes made by the letter M, 2 M's, or even the letter MB, or in some cases the letters MN, as in like damn. You know the place where the water is. Stop. And guess what? There are only 44 phonemes in the entirety of the English language, but folks are teaching children without an understanding of those phonemes. And so when kids read out loud in class and they make a mistake with a phoneme, the teacher has to be knowledgeable enough to correct the issue right there. So it's not just about learning the content. High school folks, middle school folks, I'm going to teach my content, I'm going to close my door, stay out of here. But it's about teaching my content, and when I notice that kids are having an issue with one of the phonemes and one of the graphemes, I resolve it right there on the spot. It only takes a second. But guess what? We got to have common instructional knowledge so we can know what language to use, and we need a tool to make it happen in the classroom in real time when we see that there's a need. So let me give you an example, a few examples. That B inside of those forward slashes, that's a phoneme. It's a sound, right? What graphemes are represented by that phoneme? So when I write the sound on paper, what letters am I likely to write? B or BB. Y'all with me? So phoneme inside the forward slashes. Grapheme, when that sound hits the paper, that's how it's spelled. People will tell you spelling doesn't matter. That's a lie. Spelling doesn't interfere with creating meaning. Yes, it does. And when folks read your children's writing responses on the PARC assessment, if the spelling interferes, they're going to get a lower score. And so we have to, kids write how they text. So you can misspell something when you text because that's how it is. But whatever happened to a spelling assignment? Our kids can't spell because we don't have spelling opportunities for them. What graphings represent that phoneme? D-E-N, D-D, and E-D. Look at this one. This is what separates your on-grade level readers from your below grade level readers. They are only familiar with one or two of those graphings. So when they see those letters on paper, they don't know what sound they make. They don't know they all make the j sound. And so your above grade level readers, they know all four of those. Your below grade level readers only recognize j as making the j sound. Y'all with me? That's what's separating your higher performers from your lower performers, even at the secondary level. I'll give you a few more and I'll move on. Look at that. What graphings are represented by the k sound? Y'all see that? Look at that. So kids will see Q-U-E in a word and not know what sound to make. And if you don't know enough sounds, look, the phoneme is the smallest unit of sound. That's the first power. The grapheme is the smallest unit of writing. And so imagine reading on a regular basis and you don't know the smallest unit of sound or writing. And then somebody wants you to analyze the extent to which the author fulfills the writing purpose. Are y'all with me? And so secondary folks, we can't ignore this. You have a grant. I'm hoping that your grant will give you access to folks or training that will help your teachers to recognize these issues when kids have them and resolve them on the spot. Think about your budget. What did I have as a secondary principal? I had a reading specialist for every grade in my budget. I made it happen. And that reading specialist pulled small groups of kids who had issues with this and then pushed them back into their grade level English class. And I called the parents and said, do you want them in PE or do you want them to read? I probably broke a rule when I pulled them out of PE. But they couldn't read. Look at this one, and I'm going to move on. Look at this one. I'm going to move on. Look at that. Look at number 13. We want kids to do well on the PARCC assessment, but they can't read. They cannot decode fluently. And guess what? There are only 45 of these. So, which means that it's doable. Look at number 22. Look at number 18. There are only 44 of these in the entirety of the English language, which means what? If we can learn these and we can transfer this knowledge to kids. So in your school improvement plan, think about it. Do your children have an issue with phonemes and graphemes? The answer is yes. Not every one of them. No, I'm not painting with a broad brush here. But there are some groups who do. Okay. Now, the third element. The first element was what? Phonemic awareness. Second element was what? Phonics, the rules. The third element is vocabulary development. Let me tell you, there are teachers who are taking the 1923 approach to teaching vocabulary development in your building. 1923, the year my grandmother was born. But vocabulary development is not a word of the day on the PA system. No one's listening. Vocabulary development is not a Frere model only. Vocabulary development is not using a word in a sentence. Vocabulary development are those 6 things. And I talk about them in this book in great detail. Let me walk you through them real fast. Look at that. Word families. There are 37 word families in the entirety of the English language. Do our kids know that if they don't, their brain is doing too much work to make sense of, to decode in order to, and they cannot successfully consume what they've read and create meaning as they read. Look at that. Sight words. What are sight words? Sight words are tier 1 words. You've heard of tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 words? Tier 2 words are words like analyze, determine, distinguish. They cross content areas. Tier 3 words are words like metamorphosis in science because it belongs to that content area. Like onomatopoeia in English. Like gestalt in art. But there are some words called sight words that just kids have to remember. Like around, about, So that when they see them, they can just say them out loud, they just have to memorize them. There are kids in your secondary building who don't know some of the sight words. Like there versus there, where versus word. And that's slowing them down. Okay? Context clues. Let me do it this way. These 3 green sheets are really important. 97% of the words that kids will ever see when they read come from those 3 pages. 97% of the words that kids will see, and no matter what content area they're being taught, come from 30 prefixes, 30 group words, and 30 suffixes. And guess what, y'all? Texas just came out, and that's where I grew up originally. Our teachers don't know those 3 pages. So when they encounter an unfamiliar word, we're talking about vocabulary development as a strategy to get kids to proficiency and beyond. Because our teachers don't know these words, word parts, they skip over them. And so when they encounter a word that kids don't know, the teacher is not necessarily the resource that children need to get them to proficiency and beyond. We already said you got to understand 95% of the words you see when you read. So this represents 97, which means that as a principal, I wanted these plastered in every hallway, on every wall. I wanted them glued to the kids' desktops. So that when kids read and they see a word that is unfamiliar to them, they use the 30, is what I call them, to make sense of words in the text. Because I want them to do incredible things with the text that they've read, but they don't understand the text. Context clues. There are 4 types of context clues. What does that mean? 30% of the words that kids will see, you can't use a word part to make sense of the word. You have to use context. And by the way, what is context? 4 types: definitional, synonym, antonym, and inferential. So teachers have to teach kids, when you see a word that doesn't have word parts, you got to look around the word. And the first type, the first strategy is to see if the definition is there. It's a definitional. Definition for the word that's unfamiliar is somewhere near the word. Antonym context clue, that's a word that means the opposite of that word is somewhere near the word you don't know. Synonym, that's a word that means the same as the word around the word that you don't know. And inferential, you just got to figure it out. You got to pray and figure it out. Now, y'all, this is huge. Every content area, please hear me. Vocabulary development is about, at the elementary level, sight words, right? But then beyond the elementary level, it's also about word parts, context clues, and point of use annotation. Point of use annotation of what? What does point of use mean? It means at the point that you're getting ready to use the text, to do something with the text, this is what English teachers do in secondary school. They want to teach the text rather than using the text to teach a skill. They want to teach Romeo and Juliet. You go in the classroom and ask kids, what are you doing? We're doing Romeo and Juliet. No, you're not. You're reading Romeo and Juliet to understand characterization, which is the process by which the author reveals the personality traits of the characters. That's what we want kids to know. But if kids can't understand, so I digress, but let me go back to this. Point of use annotation is, before you read a single sentence, class, tell me if there's a word in sentence number 1 you don't understand, because we've got to deal with it. And at that point, annotate the text. What does annotate mean? A-N-N-O-T-E. Did I spell it right? A-N-N-O-N-A-T-E. Annotate. A-T-E, process. N-O-T, note. The process of taking a note. So take a note in real time so that kids don't read an entire text and don't understand the words that made up the text. You know why kids don't understand what they read on a page? Because they don't understand what they read in a paragraph. Because they don't understand what they read in a sentence. Because they don't understand a series of phrases. Because they don't understand individual words. Because they don't understand word parts. So children will not be able to do what the PARC assessment wants them to do if they don't understand word parts that become pages and paragraphs. Y'all, that's rich and you know it. Y'all still being Methodist. So how do you ascend the pyramid of cognitive demand if kids don't have access to the words that are in the text to ascend the pyramid of cognitive demand? And people will say, look, my kids don't read on grade level. I can't give them that complex text. Teacher, you're supposed to be the bridge to the complex text. By doing what? Making sense of the words before and while they're reading the text. What satisfies you as an administrator? What satisfies you as an evaluator? point of use annotation. Without it, you shouldn't be satisfied. Without seeing the 30, 30, 30, you shouldn't be satisfied. Because look, if kids are performing here and all the teachers are performing here, if student groups are staying here and everybody's got to go on evaluation, universal language of literacy. Look at these words. Universal language of literacy. Think of tier 2 words for a second. We're still talking about vocabulary development. These words, Washington County, if you don't have a single definition of these words, you slow down progress. You slow down literacy development. You slow down performance. You slow down improvements in student outcomes inadvertently. Remember I talked about analyze and needing one definition for analyze? Washington County, you need one definition for every one of those words behind me. Why? Because they're the words that make up the assessment, no matter your content. Go back to your building and give your teachers a Post-it note and say to them, define conclusion, and see what you get on every Post-it note. Go back to your building and say to teachers, define inference. Give everybody their own Post-it note, same color. Give them all the same color pen. Tell them don't write their name on it. And see what you get. Therein lies your issue around literacy. Because people, secondary, we think, oh, it's all about my content. It's all about my content. No, your content is assessed through literacy. That's literacy. If you know content, but you don't know analyze, you're illiterate. If you know content, but you don't know paraphrase, you're illiterate. I'm going to pause for a moment, talk to somebody about this. What are you thinking? Calling you back in 5. Calling you back in 4. Calling you back in 3. Okay, calling you back. What'd you say? Washington County, what'd you say? What'd you say to your colleague? Yes, ma'am.
Just how very important it is to come to a common definition, because it's not only the PARCC assessments that's asking students to demonstrate these skills, it's every assessment, assignments in our classes. And if we don't have common definitions, we are confusing the students.
Yeah, so kids go from one grade or even one classroom to the next in a given grade. And teacher says, forget what they told you, remember what I said. Right? Look behind me. Look behind me on that screen. Watch this. What's an inference? It's a logical assumption based upon facts or information from the text combined with prior knowledge and or experience. People will say, Dr. Dickey, children don't need that definition. That's not true. They need that operational definition, but it is that operational definition that is used by the writers of the assessment to construct their question. They're assuming that kids have been exposed to that operational definition. Teachers will say, well, I want kids to have kid-friendly language. I think it's unfriendly not to give them access to the language of the assessment. Y'all with me? Did y'all catch that? What does it mean to cite? Because 95% of the questions that kids have to respond to on the PARCC assessment require them to cite textual evidence, even if they're multiple choice questions. They have to go back into the text to support their response, yes? 95% of the questions. But we don't have a common definition for cite. And cite is not what you found. Cite is where you found it. The textual evidence is what you found. So when you cite textual evidence, you say where you found what you found. And who does that belong to? Every content area. And we have all these things like CUCC. What are those other things that we teach kids to do? Those strategies to make sure. Restate your question. You know, it's like we're saying to you, what's your name, sir? You have your hand like this. What's your name? Yeah, yes, sir. In front of you. Yes, sir. Kyle. Okay, next to you. What's your name? Matt. It's like me saying to you, Matt, what's your name? And you say, what's my name? Think about it. The strategy that we say to kids, always restate the question. What does restating the question get you but confused? Were you just confused? Watch this. Say what I just said to you about what's my name. What's your name? What is my name? My name is Matt. Doesn't that sound ridiculous? So why do we tell children to restate the question? Are y'all with me? We want them to answer the question. Why do we give children sentence starters? Because without conceptual understanding, you need a sentence starter. Without conceptual understanding of what? Of what those words mean. Because those words are loaded inside of every test question. And we don't have a common definition. I'm going to show you a document that has common definitions that I created for all content areas for all grades up to K-12. Because it's one thing for me to say, here's a problem that you have. There's another thing for me to say, and here's a tool to fix it. Common instructional knowledge, language, and tools means aligned curriculum, instruction, and assessment. That's what that means. So let me move. I'm going to skip fluency and comprehension. I'll just say this about fluency and comprehension. Fluency is not just reading the words at a certain rate. It's about understanding the words you read at a certain rate. And comprehension is not about recall. Comprehension is about thinking. Can you think critically? Comprehension is not about recalling what you read. It's about can you think critically about what you read. So I recommend this as it comes to reading and learn. So I'm making the shift from learning to read to reading to learn. So it's going to sound more secondary to you, okay? So what does it mean? Here's what I'm recommending you do, and it's going to catapult your district to start. Number one, construct and make sure that around what you teach in each content area, that there is common instructional knowledge of what has to be taught. That we don't assume that teachers know the content that they have to deliver. In many cases, you guys, that's my number. People say to me, Dr. Dickey, you act like you have a panacea to underperformance. I do. It's knowledge of the content. And it is professional development moments that don't diminish people because I think they don't know it. I just find a way to teach it to them without making them feel like they're less than because they don't know. Go ahead and ask the average middle school teacher, what does main idea mean? And see what you get. Will they tell you it's that which the text is mostly about? And when you ask them, where is the main idea commonly found in the text? Middle school teachers will tell you in the first sentence of the paragraph it's not true. So there are some content knowledge gaps around some really important concepts that live inside of our content. So what does it mean to align curriculum and assessment? It is to align the knowledge that you have around the curriculum at every tier of the organization. So Laura, when you purchase something for English teachers, from your knowledge base you purchase. When you bring in someone to talk, to stand in front of teachers, in front of administrators, you better make sure that they're good enough to stand in front of your people. So they don't waste their time. You with me? Hopefully you didn't waste their time today. The second thing is make sure everybody has the language that they need to successfully plan and deliver instruction and give feedback. So this is saying, okay, when you became principal, when you became assistant principal, did you only become assistant principal or principal of one content area? You became assistant principal or principal of multiple content areas. So this is about ensuring that assistant principals don't become bouncers. This is about ensuring that principals are plugged into the instructional program in that building. They have their finger on the pulse of it. Because they're saying, look, around this common instructional knowledge, I have common expectations. And everybody on my team has the same expectation. You can't go to dad and get something that mommy didn't give you. You can't go to dad and get a lower expectation than mom has. That's what this is about. To make sure that who's ever walking into that classroom to give a teacher feedback, they're not being confused by person A versus person B versus person C. And sometimes folks from central office can come in and create confusion. So as a principal, I said to folks from central office, I love you to pieces, but check in with me first. And as a principal, I had to be willing for folks from central office to come in because they were my partners. But I didn't want my partnership to create chaos. And there are differences in our knowledge and there are differences in our language, chaos happens. You know the only thing that occurs on its own volition without any help from us? Chaos. And so every member of the team has to have common instructional knowledge, common instructional language, and accept a tool that will help us to push kids forward. So let me jump to these 4 practices that I think will help you to improve outcomes. But let me do this real fast. Let's say this is a standard in the state of Maryland. That kids have to determine the main idea of the text, and they have to recount the details, and they have to eventually explain how those key details support the development of the main idea. Watch this. This applies to science, applies to social studies, applies to math. People will read that standard and think 400 different things. But here's what they should be thinking. Number one, they should be thinking that students must be able to, according to this standard, determine what the text is mostly about. That's the first thing kids have to do, is determine what the text is mostly about. But there's more. You see those semicolons in the standard, that semicolon in the standard? It says they have to do something else. They also have to distinguish between main idea and topic. So folks in Washington County are teaching main idea, but they never teach the kids the word topic. Why do you want them to teach the word topic while teaching the word main idea? Because topic is too broad to be main idea, and it's often conflated with main idea, confused with main idea. So when kids get to a Park assessment, they see A, B, C, D. What's the main idea of this text? A, B, C, D. One of the answer choices is going to be too broad. But no one told kids all year long, look out for an answer choice that's too broad. And it is the topic, which means the subject of the text. Y'all know I'm right. There's more to be taught here. Students must also be aware that the main idea is not always found in the first sentence of the paragraph. In fact, it's seldom there. Most of the times, it's latent, it's hidden, which means you got to think to figure it out. Guess what kids hate to do? Think. Not all kids. It's being cheeky. Students should also be aware that in some cases the main idea is not stated at all, and then kids should be aware that recounting the key details is a prerequisite of being able to determine the main idea. And guess what? The key details are too narrow to be the main idea. And guess what? In addition to too broad, the concept too narrow has to be taught while you're teaching main idea, or you're not teaching main idea. This is happening with the finite number of standards that have to be taught and assessed and mastered. This is happening with many of your standards. So look, how long have you had these new standards? How many years? About 8? About 8 years, you had the new standards, the new ELA standards, the new math standards, yes? We're just coming up with the next generation science standards. We're coming up with the new social studies standards. They're in revision. But guess what? So the ELA and the math standards we've had for about 8 years. How long are we going to unpack the same standards? How long are we going to unpack them? You need a new thing to do. You need something else to do with your time. And so you need a resource that is aligned to the state standards that unpacks the standards once and for all, so that folks can just simply understand what has already been unpacked. A PLC on unpacking the standards is 2011. They should already be unpacked and handed to people to understand what was unpacked. That will promote literacy. You don't have time. You don't have time to unpack. These are other people's children. And then finally, in order to support the determination of the main idea, students will need a great deal of practice distinguishing between important words and phrases and ancillary words and phrases. What do kids highlight when you give them a highlighter? Everything. So main idea is about saying, I'm going to teach you how not to highlight everything, because everything is not a key detail supporting the development of the main idea. And then what do you need? Look at the top of that page. This where it says determine. Now what do you see at the top of that page? The same standard. You see the same standard? Remember I said constructional knowledge, language, and tools is aligned in curriculum instruction and assessment. So then what do you need? You need a tool that's aligned to the true expectation of that standard. I'll give you a moment to consume it. What do you see there? Remember the interpretation that I just went through. Tell me, what do you see there? The interpretation of the standard included words like too broad, right? Too narrow, topic. What do you see here? You see a step-by-step graphic organizer to help children to make sense of a really complex standard that's actually simple when you understand the pieces of it and it's been unpacked properly. Y'all see it? You see topic there first? Why is topic on a main idea graphic organizer? Because it's the thing that's constantly confused with main idea. Why is there 3 boxes for key details, for kids to pull out key details from the text? Because it's the thing that is the foundation of the development of the main idea. And then when you see that box that says now explain how the key details support the development of the main idea, that is the standard one little piece at a time, and therefore that is the PARCC assessment. So if children have to take a performance-based assessment based upon that standard, then they need access, teachers need access to performance-based tools to help them to make instruction happen consistent with the nuanced expectation of the standard. I'll breathe in a second. Look at the bottom right-hand corner of this graphic organizer. What do you see there? Why is that important? Because that is the language of the standard and therefore the language of the assessment. And children cannot afford to have different definitions of common terms. This doesn't take away teacher creativity. Because I can hear teachers say now, well, my creativity, what about? There should be a standard for kids to be exposed to. There's a standard. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second and talk to somebody next to you. What do you think about this interpretation of a standard and this tool to make it happen? Talk to somebody next to you. Okay, so let me call you back. Now I want to tell you something about Scholastic as I call you back. Let me call you back in 3, call you back in 2, and I apologize for not giving you more think time. Call you back in 1. I'm married Kate. Here's what Scholastic is doing right now. It's coming out soon. Here's what Scholastic is doing right now. They've taken these ideas that I'm talking to you about, and they've embedded them in their Scholastic literacy program. So Scholastic is building resources, tools that will help you to make sure kids get this experience, K through 6. To make sure that it's happening, because we know that these tools will accelerate progress for kids. I'll be able to show you some, secondary materials today. But Scholastic is currently building. It's going to be out soon, and I'm one of the authors of that program. So Scholastic Education's K-6 literacy program nationwide, I'm one of the authors of that program. And these ideas are embedded inside of it, okay? Now, let me move here to the practice. So sometimes you go to PD and you say, why the heck was I there? That sounded good, I was partially inspired, so what? The folder that they gave me at the PD, I threw in the backseat of my car. When they cleaned my car, I threw it away, okay? Let me make sure you don't throw these ideas away. So let me make it practical to practitioners of school leadership. Here we go. I want to impact how you think about teaming. When you bring teachers together in teams, what should they be working on? What's the work? I want to impact in my remaining minutes what you are satisfied with as it comes to daily instruction. I want to impact the professional learning plan that you have built into your school improvement plan. I want to impact what you go and get to help your teachers to give kids access to higher quality instruction. I want to impact the feedback that you give to teachers on a regular basis through 4 practices. Here we go. 4 things. If these 4 things well, your children will defy the odds. Not just will you have overall gains, your student groups will jump. Number 1, an objective. You're like, what? An objective? That's a certain kind of objective. You want, in every classroom you walk in your building, a performance-based objective. Because if the test is going to be performance-based, then the instruction has to start performance-based. Otherwise, like a little leaven will leaven the whole bunch. If you start, teacher starts a lesson and has no objective, that lesson is already over. The objective is a roadmap. I could have driven here from DC this morning without a roadmap, but not without a series of needless wrong turns. So the objective, the performance-based objective, is about getting to your destination. Sometimes you walk into a classroom, you don't know what the teacher is doing. It's like, what's happening here? And even you read the little lesson plan that they turned in on Friday by 5 o'clock or by midnight, and it still didn't make sense. I'm wrong? Am I wrong about that? Does that happen to you every now and then? Okay. Y'all so quiet. I go other places and they're like, amen, and yeah. And y'all are like, that's okay. I will come back again. So, an objective is about making sure that you have an instructional objective on the board, not an activity. Because an activity won't be assessed. But content will be assessed through higher order thinking. So this is about starting every day that kids come into a classroom, every lesson that kids are a part of, with an instructional objective that is accessible to kids. Why do you want the objective that's accessible to kids? When I was a teacher, I put an objective on the board because the principal said put an objective on the board. And sometimes my objective didn't match what I was doing, but I had an objective on the board. So this is about moving away from thinking that the objective is an act of compliance and moving toward thinking of the objective as an instructional strategy. Stay with me, I'm going somewhere, watch it. You want it accessible to the teacher. You want the objective accessible to the teacher. Why? So you say to the teacher, is that your roadmap? Are you on the right street? Did you get an HOV lane? Where are you? Where are you going? And then, so it's designed to check them to make sure they're not talking about the 1950s during their instruction, but they're making sure they're staying on task. And then, why do you want the objective accessible to the observer? So that the observer, when you walk into the classroom, you don't have to go look for the lesson plan to figure out what's happening for kids. The roadmap is embodied by the objective. Okay, I had to say that, but let me say this. You want it to be content and you want it to be high order thinking. You want your objective to be 1 part content. You want your objective to be 1 part, now do something with the content. Because that's what the PARC assessment does. It says, here's some content, now show me you know how to use it. Why? So that kids can climb this pyramid on a regular basis. So I talked about climbing the pyramid, but I didn't tell you how to make climbing the pyramid systematic for every classroom in your building. This is the answer to that question, that comment that you made earlier, sir. So how do you make sure that for the classrooms where kids aren't climbing that pyramid of cognitive demand, that every kid gets an opportunity to climb the pyramid of cognitive demand? You look for an objective that looks two ways. It has content and it has a higher order thinking skill. So let me show you the three types of objectives you're going to see, and then we're going to do a quick activity. You're going to see, if you do nothing from what we talk about today, you're going to see three kinds of objectives on classroom boards in your building. Flawed, which means something's wrong with it. Something's misplaced, it's an activity, it's just wrong. And then you're going to see content-driven objectives, which just require kids to just remember. Okay, today class, we're going to identify phases of matter. That's remembering. But identify the phases of matter to what? In order to do what? That's performance-based. That they use it to do something. Here it is. I want you to look at a series of objectives, and with someone next to you, I want you to tell me, is this objective flawed? Is this objective content-driven? Or is this objective performance-based? What does flawed mean? There's some deficiency. Or it's like an activity. What's content-driven? It's just about kids remembering something. And what's the third one? They use the content that they remember to go up the pyramid of cognitive demand. SWBAT means students will be able to. Okay? Now, with your shoulder partner, what kind of objective is that? Talk to somebody, please. Is it content-driven? Is it performance-based? Or is it flawed? Because you won't be satisfied anymore by a flawed or content-driven objective. Teachers are only going to get a satisfactory or above rating if you see a performance-based objective. Okay, well, it's content-driven. What'd you say? What makes it content-driven? Because it just says we're going to determine the text structure used by the author. But what? In order to do what? In order to compose an original text using a text structure. Y'all see it? That's what would have made it performance-based. Okay, let's do another one. Use a jigsaw to state the main idea of a portion of a text. Is it flawed? Is it content-driven? Is it performance-based? Talk to someone. I hear the answer already. What do y'all say? It's flawed. Why? A jigsaw is an activity. It's not content. You may use a jigsaw as a delivery method to get kids to understand the content, but remember the objective should be one part content, one part use the content. Okay? Now, I'll say this. On the PARC assessment, you don't have to read the entirety of the text to determine its main idea. They may not give you the entire text. They may give you a paragraph from a text and say, what's the main idea? That single paragraph in that text. So a portion of the text is okay, because sometimes they have to read a portion of the text and answer a question. Okay? Look at number 3. IoT means in order to. Is that flawed? Is that content-driven? Or is it performance-based? Talk to someone. What do you say, Washington County? I got a thumbs up from you. What's your name? Paula. Paula, you're right. It is performance-based. Why? Because it has content, determine main idea. That's English content. In order to do what? Go up that pyramid of cognitive demand and create something, a summary. Y'all see it? Watch this. Ooh, you're going to see this. You're going to see this. Look at that. What kind of objective is that? What do you say? Y'all ready? Tell me something. read it out loud. Students will be able to analyze the extent to which the author fulfills the reading purpose. Hey guys, there's no such thing as reading purpose. It doesn't exist. There's a writing purpose. That was a trick, y'all. It's flawed. There's no such thing as reading purpose. And guess what? Who cares about page 19? Because children should be reading a variety of texts that are historical in nature, that are scientific, that are technical, that cross eras, that cross topics, that cross perspectives, and on the literary side, from a variety of authors, on a variety of genres, on a variety of eras of literature, on a variety of traditions of literature, on a variety of themes. So who cares about page 19? Kids see page 19 in an objective and think that skill is relegated only to page 19. They don't transfer. Your objective is the most important part of your instruction because everything else is a derivative of it. Y'all with me? You want to push your kids forward, not just subgroups. You want to push them forward overall. And then, by the way, you take care of the subgroups. So you don't need a strategy for little brown kids. You don't need a strategy for English language learners. You don't need a strategy for a particular neighborhood. You need an overall strategy that pulls everybody in. So an amateur school improvement person will say, help that group. When you help everybody, every group jumps. And I'm a little brown person saying that. There's some brown people. Hi, brown person. No. Please take that out of the tape. That's inappropriate. Okay. But my point is, you don't have to zero in on a particular group. Help everybody. By having a strategy that helps everybody. And the strategy, y'all, it helps everybody. This is why I got the most significant gains in the state. This is why I'm pulling entire districts off of the state takeover list in one fell swoop. This practice. Let's go to another content area. Oh, let's do this one real quick. Read chapter 1 of Things Fall Apart and complete the graphic organizer. Genius! The title of the text doesn't belong in an objective. And the graphic organizer is not a higher order thinking skill. And they may be thinking while they're completing the graphic organizer, but it's not a higher order thinking skill. Let's go to social studies. Identify the impact of colonization on Native Americans. What kind of objective is that? Content driven, because it just says, I'm going to remember something. And most of our objectives are content driven, y'all. Most of the objectives you see on boards in Washington County are I'm making an assumption, they're content driven. Identify the natural resources in Asia and Africa. What kind of objective is that? They're just going to remember something. What kind of objective is that? What makes it performance-based? Do you see knowledge that has to be loaded into kids? Discuss democracy and communism. For what purpose? Compare and contrast the branches of government and world powers. You see it? Typically, that objective will stop at the word communism. And then when kids get to a question on communism and democracy, because they've not used their knowledge of democracy and communism, they don't remember the democracy and communism. When I was a little kid, my parents used to take us to the skating rink. This was like the late 80s. And I was the youngest of 3, so I was like the play to my brother and sister because I was awkward and still developing, but now I'm a handsome swan. I digress. But at the skating rink, we would skate around for hours. And because I was a boy, I would do like tricks on the skates because I had a goal in mind. I'd be skating backwards and like Beat It would come on. This was like the 80s, so Michael Jackson was in. So I'd be skating backwards. Then I'd skate on one leg. Then I'd turn around on skates because I had a goal. Because I knew that halfway through the night, the skating rink floor switched over to something else. What did it switch over to? If you're from the 80s, you know this. Yes, it switched over to the dance floor. So the skating rink floor became the dance floor. So some of you dropped your kids off. You don't know. But that's what they were doing. They started out skating, but they ended up dancing in the dark with a little globe. They were like, inappropriate, okay? Here's the point I'm trying to make. There was something interesting about being in those skates for hours. When you stepped out of the skates, there was something different about walking for just a few minutes. Walking seemed like a glider because you've been logging these heavy, skates. Instruction should be like teaching children to skate. Instruction should be like teaching children to skate. Heavy lifting for hours, on hours, and hours, for 180 school days. So when they come out of the skates, like came out of the skates in the 80s, walking was like easier for a few minutes. So when they come out of our skating type instruction, lifting the heavy weights, when they get to the park assessment, they walk right through it. Easier and lighter because they've been skating all year long. That third objective is skating. Those first two objectives, no weights. Are y'all with me? Does that make sense? Okay. Let's look at another content area. Science. Discuss the systems of the human body in order to describe how they function as a unit to sustain life. What kind of objective is that? Say it, Washington County. You said it. Say it. Performance-based. Typically, they stop at the word body. That's not enough. It's just remembering. Look at that one. What kind of objective is that? Identify the elements in the periodic table. Content-driven. You got the swing of it now. What kind of objective is that one? Content. What kind of objective is that one? What kind is it? Content driven. It should say in order to compare inherited and acquired traits. Because your ability to discuss the process of genetic coding is connected to your ability to compare inherited to acquired traits. You ought to look at an objective differently when you walk in the classroom in the future if you're concerned about moving students forward. Okay? Let's go to mathematics. That's content driven. That is a kindergarten standard for mathematics. But it doesn't say to kids, now what do I do with my ability to count to 10? Because you think to a kindergarten, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that little kid 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What have you done? You didn't build a rocket to the moon. You just count, you just remember 10 numbers. But what should they do? They should count by 1 to 10 in order to compose and decompose composite figures. What do you mean composite figures? You know those little things they click into each other, like Lego pieces. This is about making sure that kids, you say 9 to a kindergartner, and they're supposed to pick up from a pile 9 cubes and click them together. That's composing a composite figure. And then you say, now decompose them. And what should they do? Pull them apart. Is that happening for our kinder kids? So they roll up to you in middle school, and they have not been engaged in performance-based instruction for 6 years. And then you're trying to get them to think, but they just want to get the answer. This is an 8th grade math objective. What kind of objective is it? Is it content-driven? Is it performance-based? Or is it flawless? Just be able to populate a function table. Is that math content? Is that 8th grade math content? It is. You want them to populate a function table, X, Y, yes? For what? In order to do what? Describe and graph the relationship between the independent and dependent variable. That is, all day long, performance-based. But we'll stop right here at table. But when kids get to the park assessment, they have to discuss the relationship between the independent and dependent variable, when all along their instructions should have forced that in them. Y'all see it? I'm beating a dead horse, but I'm trying to take you somewhere. Look at that one. The students will be able to discuss that a two-dimensional figure is similar to another if the second can be obtained by a sequence of transformation, in order to describe a sequence that exhibits the similarity between them. What kind of objective is that? It's performance-based. One is a prerequisite of the other. Instructional leaders, I recommend, and there's a lot of work associated with this comment I'm about to make, I recommend that you become familiar with the content areas that you never taught. Because there's some carbon monoxide in some of your classrooms. And you have to have your carbon monoxide, what they call a detector, on at all times. And you can't have it on without knowledge of the standards. I came to stretch you. I don't want to disrespect you, but I want to stretch you. Because when you go to a special education classroom, here's what you want to happen. You don't want to be able to tell the difference between the special educator and the general educator. You don't want even the kids to know that one is the, because sometimes the special educator gets treated like a teacher assistant. So let me draw a parallel, administrator. When you walk into an English classroom, you don't want your teachers to know you never taught English. You walk into a math, you don't want them to know you never taught math. You want to become a student of those content areas so that you can provide your teachers with feedback or know who to bring in to give them the right feedback they need to help you to give them the best kind of feedback. Okay, a good objective should have two parts, a no and a do. The no is what you want kids to know so that you ask them to do something which is higher order, okay? Now let's go to practice number 2. There are only 4 practices and I'm out of your way. Here's practice number 2. Do these 4 things well. Here's number 2. I love this one. Make sure that children pick up new words. That's all that means. What kinds of new words? General words and content-specific words. The average kid who reads below grade level in your building has 2,500 words in their active vocabulary store, in their lexicon. They have 2,500 words. In order to read on grade level, they need 25,000 words in their lexicon. How do you get a kid that doesn't like to read from 2,500 to 25,000? Because here's what happened, Mike, right? Matt, here's what won't happen, Matt, and I don't have low expectations of kids, but here's what's likely not to happen. Mr. Matt, I'm happy to be back here in the 2018-19 school year. I'm excited about the 11th grade, Mr. Matt. Here's what the kids won't say to Mr. Matt. Mr. Matt, guess what I did over the summer? I read the classics. Because kids don't naturally want to go and read the classics. Not all of them. Many of them don't. But that's how you develop vocabulary. You read new books. You read different books. You read. So how do you develop their vocabulary in the absence of them being avid readers? I'm getting ready to show you. Because kids won't get to mastery without a bigger vocabulary. Strategy number 1. The objective that you put up that is performance-based in nature, teach the words that are in it before you ever do the stuff you want them to do. So you have an objective on main idea, teach them about what main idea is first. If you have an objective on colonization, teach them what colonization is conceptually, then read the text on colonization. You want them to distinguish between plant and animal cells in order to classify organisms. Teach them what it means to classify an organism. Teach them what a plant cell is and what a plant cell isn't conceptually, and then have them do the work. So teachers want to teach the content, but you got to teach the language of the content before you can teach the content. Y'all with me? You got to teach the language of the content before you teach the content. So let's imagine that this is the performance-based objective up on a classroom in one of your classrooms. What does it say? Students will be able to cite strong and thorough textual evidence in order to support an analysis of what the text says explicitly, as well as inferences drawn from the text. So imagine that that is the objective. Imagine with me for a second. What do you want to see teachers do? Here's what you want to see teachers do. They got to teach general words, and they got to teach content-specific words. Are there any general words in that objective? Give me one. Cite. Why use a general word? Because social studies, cite. English, cite. So science, cite. Art, cite. Are there any content-specific words living inside of that objective? Textual evidence could go into any classroom. See, the ones, English is kind of wonky because some of their tier 2 words are everybody else's, some of their tier 2 words are also their tier 3 words. Okay, so it doesn't matter if it's tier 2 or tier 3, it's a word that's unfamiliar to the children. So are there any words in this objective that are unfamiliar to kids? If so, call them out to me real quick, that you think kids may not know the answer to. Explicitly, what else? Inference, what else? Analysis, what else? Yes, sir. They will look at their own and think, well, is that through? So what I recommend your teachers do is they anticipate the words that are living inside of the performance-based objective that kids may not make no assumption about a single word that kids know. So to do this, kids come into the classroom, they see the objective on the board, and they see some words that are underlined. The teacher says to them, what do you think those words mean? Let's talk about it. So let's talk about it. Like I would recommend your teachers talk about it with your kids. Okay? A citation, it's a reference brought forward, and it tells you exactly where you found it. And what is strong? What does strong mean? It means that it's powerful. It can perform a specified action. And what does thorough mean? It's written with great care and completeness. And by the way, what is textual evidence? It's information that's taken directly from the text by the reader to prove or disprove something. And what does support mean? It means to hold up or reinforce something. And what is an analysis? It's the process of separating material into its constituent parts or elements. And what does explicit mean? It means that it's clearly stated in the text. And what is an inference? It's a logical assumption that's based upon factual information from the text, plus prior knowledge and or experience. Is that happening for kids before the kids read Romeo and Juliet to make inferences? Is that happening for kids in a science class on cellular division? Or is someone saying, before we talk about it, before we do anything with cellular division, I got to make sure you know that cellular means related to a cell. In the math class, while kids are working on percentages, is somebody saying to them, look at the word percentage. What does it mean? P-E-R, out of, cent, 100, A-G-E, a measure of. So what is percentage? A measure out of 100. Or we just assuming the kids, we just stand up there talking, and the kids are like hearing adults from Charlie Brown. So that's not clear enough. Watch this. Okay, today class, those definitions are too big for you. Let me bring it to your street. Let me bring it to your street like this. Today we're going to quote powerful, complete words taken from the text to hold up parts of what's said and what's assumed. What just happened for kids who were going to be struggling before? What just happened for them? Say it, sir.
Light bulb.
Light bulb. Epiphany. What would happen if kids were exposed to academic language that lives inside of every content area like this for 13 years? What would happen to your seniors? They would be unstoppable. What would happen to your English language learners? Unstoppable. What would happen to your special needs students whose progress has been stalled? Unstoppable. And I'm not telling you something that's a theory. I'm telling you something I put in practice everywhere I've ever been, and we're getting the results. So what's the first practice? Have an objective. What's the second practice? Make sure kids know the words in the objective. Sounds simple, but it's powerful. It applies to mathematics. You see this objective on the board, but then walk into the classroom and ask kids, what's a sample? So they're in a unit on proper stats and prob, and ask kids, what is a sample? They'll say, I'm just doing my work. What are you doing? I'm doing this worksheet. They should say, I'm examining information this week in my class about a sample of the population so that I can make valid generalizations about the population. But typically when I walk in classrooms across the country, and I'm not beating up teachers, I'm a teacher, I say to kids, what are you doing? They say, I'm doing my work. I want them to say, I want them to use that language. Why? Because that's the language of the assessment. That's what makes them literate. Reading is breathing in. Writing is breathing out. Reading is breathing in. Speaking is breathing out. But our secondary classrooms across the country are like this, straight rows. Don't speak unless you're spoken to. I'm going to lecture forever, and I'm going to put you to sleep. You better like it. Does that resonate? Practice number 3. Practice number 3 is about gradual release. Practice number 1, an objective that has 2 parts, content and now think. Practice number 2, teach kids words before you start teaching. Which words? Words that cross content areas like analyze, determine, distinguish, cite, conclude, describe, discuss. And then make sure that if you're in a unit, watch this. Let's say you're in a unit on metamorphosis. Meta, process of changing shape. Kids go through a unit on metamorphosis and no one ever says to them, look at the word. Kids are in a unit on Civil War. I see it all the time. Emancipation. E. It means out. Man. Mankind. Sapate. Emancipate. To take part. Sapate. To take part. T-I-O-N. Process of. What's emancipation? The process of mankind taking part in coming out of something. Emancipation Proclamation. What's proclamation? P-R-O. In favor of. Clamation. Clam, to say. T-I-O-N. Proclamation. So what's proclamation? It is the process of saying you're in favor of something. So what is the Emancipation Proclamation? It was a document that said that you were in favor of the process of people coming out of participating in something. What are you thinking besides, God, he's smart? What are you thinking?
Common sense is not so common.
Yeah, it's common, but it's not common, necessarily commonly, it is not expected from everybody. There's some people who do it well and you applaud them and they're great. But you got to pull everybody else along. Are you satisfied if folks are in the unit of study on Emancipation Proclamation and no one ever told the kids what those word parts mean in those words? Are you satisfied in the future? I hope you will say no. If you're in a lesson and the kids are converting decimals to percentages and no one says to them, PER, out of, CENT, 100, AGE, measure of, percentages of measure out of 100, it's going to be satisfied if you never hear that language. Because conceptual understanding is a prerequisite of mastery and transfer. Transfer is better than mastery. Transfer means you taught me something, I mastered it, and then I take it to other situations without being prompted to do so. Y'all know I'm preaching. If I were a Baptist preacher, this place would be filled. Okay, gradual release. People think they are gradually releasing kids, but they are not. How'd you learn how to tie your shoe? Gradual release. Somebody released you gradually to independence. How'd you learn how to ride a bicycle? Training wheels. Gradual release. How'd you learn how to use profanity? Some of you were gifted, you were born with it. But most of us, it was gradual. We heard it when we were hanging out with our friends. We heard it on the bus stop. And now we're good at it. So if that's true, why isn't our daily instruction characterized by gradual release if that's one of the best proven ways to get kids to mastery and transfer? How many phases are there in gradual release? There are 4. And folks muddy the 4 phases, but kids need access to all 4. If you give children access to all 4 phases of gradual release, there's nothing they cannot do. There is nothing they cannot do. So let's walk through those 4 phases of gradual release. Phase number 1. It's the I do. I do. Kids, what do? Simply observe. So the one word I want you to remember is the teacher models. And what do children do? Observe. Now, gradual release is not for science instruction. Science instruction is about the 5 E's. Science instruction is about, I'm going to engage you, we're going to explore without me explaining it, then I'm going to explain it, that's the 3rd E. And then you're going to elaborate on it, which means do a lab. What's in the middle of elaborate? Lab. Then they do a lab, which means science has to be touchy. And then the final phase of the 5 E's for science is to evaluate them. Give them some type of project or presentation to do to make sure that they, pick up the knowledge. So when I'm saying gradual release, I'm not talking about science because it would be a disaster to force gradual release inside of a science classroom. Okay. Now, gradual release. First phase gradual release, I do it. Teachers, what does a teacher do? Model what you want kids to do. While kids do what? Take notes on a piece of loose leaf paper that they're going to lose? No, observe. Y'all with me? Because they need to see the teacher identify the key details and think through the process of determining the main idea. They need to see the teacher determine the main idea in order to compose the summary, distinctive personal opinions and judgments. They need to see it, hear the teacher think out loud, hear the teacher make mistakes, hear the teacher correct his or her mistakes. Second phase of gradual release. We do it. But there's something interesting about the we that I want to drop on you. It is the teacher becomes a facilitator. The teacher is no longer doing the modeling. And this is where gradual release gets muddy. You know why teachers go home tired, home exhausted? They did all the thinking. The kids did no thinking. Kids go home filled with energy. The teacher goes home exhausted. Because they didn't understand the second phase of gradual release is you step back from doing all the thinking and you become the chief questioner as a facilitator. What do I do next? What do you think I do next? Do you agree? Would you talk to your classmate? Would you refute their thinking? It's about questions. You ever watch a presidential debate? The moderator is not doing most of the talking, they're doing the questioning. So the teacher becomes the moderator during the we do in the large group. And the children do the majority of the thinking. I do it, teacher's doing 100% of the thinking. Kids are thinking, but the teacher is responsible for bringing the thinking into the classroom. So it's 100% teacher, 0 kids, and I do. And the we do, it shifts to the teacher's doing 20% of the thinking through the questioning. And then the children are doing 80% of the thinking. Y'all, it's muddy in some of your classrooms. And it's a huge barrier to kids getting to proficiency. The third phase of gradual release is referred to as you do in pairs. I do it. I'm doing the modeling. Kids, you observe. We do it. Teacher becomes a facilitator, asking the right questions so that students can do the majority of the thinking. Phase 3 of gradual release is, now I'm going to put you in pairs and I'm going to have you do exactly what I modeled and what we did in the larger group. And I'm going to do what? I'm going to walk around the classroom. I'm not going to be checking my email. I'm not going to be on my cell phone. I'm not going to be out in the hallway. I'm going to be walking around that classroom assessing and assisting kids. What I mean assess and assist kids? Look over their shoulder. Are they getting it? Are they helping each other get it? Is there some kind of clarification that they need that I can provide in that moment? Guess what? The teacher's doing 10% of the thinking in this phase of gradual release, and children are doing 90%. So we're from 100% of the thinking on the teacher to 20% of the thinking on the teacher to 10% of the thinking on the teacher. Y'all see that? And then finally, you do alone. Which means 100% of the thinking goes to the children, 0% of the thinking goes to the teacher, and the students are responsible for doing the same thing that was modeled, the same thing that they did in the large group, the same thing that they did in pairs, but this time they're doing it alone. And guess what? Kids are going to raise their hands and ask the teacher for assistance doing the I do alone. And the teacher should say no. Because it has to feel like an assessment, a true assessment opportunity, so the teacher can determine what kids need more of. I'll tell you what happens when kids are being asked to work alone. The little nice little compliant kid will raise his or her hand, and the teacher will provide assistance and invalidate the assessment. Is gradual release been followed with those percentages in your school and your district? Or is it muddy? That's a rhetorical question. Clean. Filter out the mud by making sure that teachers know their responsibility during each of the 4 phases of gradual release, and that students know their responsibility through each of the 4 phases of gradual release. Okay? Look at this and tell me. Look at this side of the document, of the screen, and tell me, what does this say? What does the size of those boxes, not boxes, or portions of the pyramid, what do they say about teacher responsibility in each of the 4 phases? What does the size of each portion of the paragraph say to you? Analyze the pyramid. Go for it. Talk to somebody next to you. Okay, let me call you back in 5. Let me call you back in 3. Call you back in 2. Okay, calling you back. What does the size of each of the portions of the pyramid say to you? Nothing? Yeah, student contribution, not only does it grow, the majority of the daily instruction should be children thinking and not the teacher thinking for children. Y'all with me? That's going to be a shift for some of your classrooms because teachers are comfortable controlling every moment of every period, class period. But it's not about control, it's about releasing kids to thinking on their own. So when they get to the assessment, they can think on their own. See that little small top of the pyramid for the I do? For the I do it? It's small. It doesn't mean I have to say to teachers, you can only do the modeling for 7 minutes and get off of it. Right? You never want to put periods of time next to each one of those. Because then that constricts teachers, it keeps them from being able to do what's in the best interest of kids. So let me ask, there was a question, and hopefully you will have questions for me because I'm going to pause for a second. It was a question. Do you want, I think this was the question, and correct me if I'm wrong. Do you want the teacher to go through all 4 of those phases in one class period? The answer is no. They can't and not do it well. Remember I said about speeding up to a red light? This is the part of your lesson that is the need of your lesson. Once you have an objective and you've taught the words, the next thing you want to do is model, engage them in guided practice, large group, and then engage them in group work, and then engage them in independent work. So this is not about getting through all 4 phases in one class period. Because if they get through all 4 phases in one class period, kids will not get to mastery. So here's what you do. This whole idea of a daily lesson plan is 1923. It's horse and buggy. Or what you say, carriage. It's horse and carriage. A daily lesson plan is not a real thing. Because just because the bell sounded doesn't mean that you finished the lesson. And so it is about making sure that you plan lesson progressions. And you're saying to teacher, I don't want to see a daily lesson plan. I want to see what you're going to teach for the next 3 to 5 to 7 days. That's a progression because it's not dependent upon the bell. It's dependent upon a goal you're trying to reach. So gradual release is about when the bell rings, pick up where you left off tomorrow, even though you didn't get through each of the 4 phases. So on Monday, you start a new objective, you may only teach the academic language that's in it. Because some of these objectives that are going to go up, because I don't have teachers write the standard on the board. That's way too big. That's too much. I want them to write an objective related to a standard. And then see kids learn or demonstrate knowledge of the academic language that lives inside of the objective. So that when the teacher models, the kids are available intellectually for the model. So that when the teacher puts them in guided practice and does we do it together, that the language that the teacher is using during that we do it, the kids have access to it. Now what if you get through you go for an entire week and you get through all 4 of those phases by Friday and kids didn't get it? What do you do? What do you want teachers to do? Go back in one of those previous phases. But guess what? I think there should be something above this. So I modeled. You listened. We did it together, but I didn't do the thinking. I just gave you a bunch of questions. Then you did it in Paris, and I looked over your shoulder, and then I helped you where you needed it, and then I had to do it alone when you were ready eventually. But you still didn't get it? What's the problem? The problem is you may not understand the language that lives inside of all of those. So if it's a lesson on determine the main idea, maybe you don't know what determine means. If it's a lesson on determine the main idea, maybe you don't know what main means. Maybe you don't know what idea means. If it's a lesson on determine the main idea in order to summarize, maybe you don't know what summary means. So it may not just be go back and reteach, it's go back and reteach the language, then go back and reteach. Okay, final practice, and then I'm out of your way. Practice number 1, make sure that there's a performance-based objective that has 2 parts, to know and to do. It's content and higher order thinking. Practice number 2, make sure that we are making sure that kids are picking up academic language. Okay? That they're picking up general words like cross-content areas, and they're picking up content-specific words like metaphors. Practice number 3, make sure that we're using either gradual release, and those 4 phases aren't muddy. Did I answer your question, by the way? And if we're using the 5 E's, make sure that we're not explaining the scientific concept before we give kids an opportunity to explore it. Okay? Practice number 4, kids have to write. Reading is breathing in, writing is breathing out. On the PARC assessment, upwards of 40% of an individual student's PARC assessment score is related in some way to their ability to write. But I'm not a proponent of kids having a separate writing course. I'm a proponent of kids writing in every course. What does that mean, writing in every course? A social studies teacher will help you to get kids that writing opportunity. If we just tell them what are the major ways that kids have to write, they'll do it naturally. They'll do it. A science teacher will give kids writing assignments. But what kinds of writing assignments? They're behind me. What types of writing do kids have to do in the PARC assessment? There are 4 types, depending upon the grade level. Type number 1, write to inform. Well, you say, Dr. Dickey, you didn't just tell me, I already knew that. Stay with me, I got something for you. They also have the right to explain. And because they're secondary, they don't write to share an opinion, they write to construct an argument, which is more sophisticated than an opinion. What makes an argument more sophisticated than an opinion? Because K5 is right to express an opinion, but 612 is right to construct an argument. What's an argument contain? It contains 3 things: claim and counterclaim. That's number 1. If they're in secondary grades and they're constructing an argument and they don't lift the claim and acknowledge the counterclaim, PARC does not give them the points. In life, if you're in an argument and you don't know what you claim, and you don't acknowledge or at least anticipate the counterclaim, you're in trouble in your argument at home later on today. So an argument has a claim and a counterclaim. That's number 1 together. And it also has evidence, and it also has reasons. Those make up the 3 components of an argument. Go and ask the average 6th through 12th grade child in the district what are the 3 components of an argument and see what you get. But PARC folks are very clear on what they're going to be assessing. Which means what? We got to have common instructional knowledge around writing, common instructional language around writing, and common instructional tools to make argumentative writing take place in our district on a regular basis. Now, the fourth type of writing is narrative writing. And folks, we love narrative writing. Write a story. Tell me about a time when and make sure you have a beginning, middle, and end. Wrong. A narrative is not about a beginning, middle, and end. A narrative in the secondary grades is about having an exposition, which is the introduction of the characters and the introduction of the setting, and sometimes the introduction of the problem or the conflict. Writing a narrative is about knowing what rising action is and how it is the antecedent to the climax, which is the highest point of tension. Writing a narrative is about understanding the elements of falling action, which are subsequent to the climax. And writing a narrative is about understanding resolution of denouement. Can I walk up to the average English teacher, grade 6 through 12, and say, talk to me about the 5 elements of a narrative? Just engage me in a conversation. So you get a new curriculum, that's not going to help you. You need common instructional knowledge of the curriculum. Y'all with me? So when people are telling kids, your narrative, middle school, high school, make sure your narrative has a beginning, middle, and end. Red flag. So notice this. No, I talked about writing to inform. What's writing to inform? Just give you information about something. Tell me about Washington County. That's writing to inform. But writing to explain is not about giving information. It's about a process. So when you write to explain, you explain how to build a rocket. See the difference? One is just factual information, and another one is process. So do all of our teachers across grade levels and disciplines know the difference between inform and explain? Do all of our teachers across grade levels and disciplines know what we mean when we say argument, claim, counterclaim, reasons, and evidence? But look at that heading. It says, from sources. Let me tell you what you're going to see if you do nothing. Let me tell you what you're going to see. Hey kids, welcome back to the 2018-19 school year. Write about your summer vacation. Nobody cares. Why does no one care? Why does Park not care? Now consider the source. So when children are asked to write to inform, they should be reading multiple sources on that topic and then be required to write to inform. When kids are being asked to explain something, they should read multiple pieces of text on that topic and then write to explain how to build a rocket. When kids are asked to write to construct an argument, they're supposed to read multiple pieces of text that argue for or against school uniforms and then argue their point on or against, for or against school uniforms. It's about sources. So you think narrative is not about sources? Yes, it is on the Clark assessment. They're going to have to read a piece of literature and then from that source, give it a new ending. Yes, ma'am.
Bringing out the view of this and saying amen, because it's not just part of that right from the sources. French, Spanish, English language, access for ELS assessment, it crosses everything.
Yes, ma'am. And it also crosses into normal life. Regular everyday life. So look, I know I referenced the park several times, but I don't care about the park. I don't care about park. I don't care about ACT and SAT. Really, as an instructional leader, I care about equitable access to high quality instruction. And what is equitable access? How is equitable access to high quality instruction facilitated? Through a performance-based objective, through teaching general and domain-specific words, general and content-specific words, through ensuring that classroom instruction is characterized by gradual release of responsibility, through ensuring that science instruction is characterized by the 5 E's, through ensuring that children have content-driven, curriculum-driven opportunities to write to inform, write to explain, write to instruct an argument, and write to compose an original narrative. One more caveat, and I'm going to give you the benediction. See that chart for middle school? See that chart for high school? Opinion belongs to elementary. Notice you don't see persuasive writing in the chart. It's gone. It's been gone for 8 years. Let it go, let it go. So when kids are writing persuasive letters, red flag. They should be writing opinion pieces. Argumentative pieces. They have a claim and counterclaim, reasons and evidence. But you can't do these without this. You can't do those without those. What does that mean? If you're going to write to give someone information on something, you got to know how to structure it. Do you remember, if you're at least 40 like I am, some of you look 12. You in the blue shirt, you look 12. No, don't look around, I'm talking to you. He doesn't remember this, because he's a SpongeBob generation kid. But some of us are Fat Albert, or those other things. What we had back in the day, I don't remember. We had Bruce Lee, okay? The Bruce Lee generation. So, Bruce Lee generation, your teacher didn't give you a sentence starter. You were taught, I taught you something, now write. Now, this new little group, they got a few crutches. And we don't want to give kids instructional crutches. We want to build their capacity and then let them go. If you're going to write to inform, you need to know text structures. So you don't need a sentence start. So if you're writing to inform, let me just tell you what the 6 text structures are. Descriptive. A descriptive text structure, a text that is organized descriptively, tells you what one person, place, thing, or idea is like. So what kind of text are you probably writing if you're writing about what one person, place, thing, or idea is like? You're probably writing to what? Inform. Descriptive text says like, a whale is this long. A whale has a dorsal fin. A whale has a hole in the, whatever. I don't know what a whale has, but I don't know why you said it now. But it tells you what one person, place, thing, or idea is like. And what you're probably doing is giving someone information. So are we saying to kids, write to inform, but choose your text structure carefully? Or we just saying write, and here's your sentence starter. SpongeBob. Here's the next time. Compare and contrast. A text that is structured compare and contrast. This is my last slide, guys. A text that is structured compare and contrast Says what two or more persons, places, things, or ideas are like. It says Washington County is like this, but Howard County is like this. What kind of text are you probably writing if you're using compare and contrast as a text structure? You could be using explanatory, right? Or you could be using informative. You could be writing informative or explanatory text. Notice you don't see expository over there, because that means nothing to a sixth grader. Sequential and chronological. How is the sequential text ordered? It's ordered without time. First, next, then. So sequence. But a chronological text, look at the word chronological. Chrono, time. L-O-G, order. I-C-A-L, related to. So how's a chronological text ordered? It's ordered using time. 1910, 1911, 1912, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m. So what kind of text are you writing? It's rhetorical. What kind of text are you writing if you're using chronological or sequential as a way to structure it? We have to say to kids, I want you to write to inform, but I need you to determine what your text structure is going to be so your train doesn't come off the train track when you start writing. Because 40% of a kid's PARCC score is related to writing. And then finally, cause and effect and problem solution. Cause and effect. How's a cause and effect text structure? And guess what, y'all? These text structures belong to every content area represented in this room. But we think this is the English teacher's job. You said it, Laura. Not we, you. But public education says, this is the English teacher's job. No, this is the social studies, the art, the music, PE. Everybody should be a part of improving student outcomes through writing. How's the cause and effect text structure? It says paragraph number 1, it rained. Paragraph number 2, it flooded. You see it? Cause, effect. What kind of text are you writing if you are using cause and effect as a text structure? Could be more than one, yes? But look at prompt solution. And by the way, there are 9 questions on the PARCC assessment. Kids have to read a piece of text and say, how is it structured? Most of your kids who have failed the PARCC assessment are failing by 6 questions. There are 9 on these. So if you didn't listen to me and didn't listen to anything I said because you were distracted by how good looking I am, if all you, just kidding. If all you did was teach them text structures, the majority of the kids who are failing would come over to passing. What's the difference between a cause and effect text and a prompt solution text? Cause effect, it rained, it flooded. Prompt solution, it is a cause and effect text, but it goes one step further. Cause, it rained. Effect, it flooded. Problem, it rained and it flooded. The cause and effect live inside of the problem. And then prompt solution takes it one step further by saying, now, what do you do about it? You build it down. You got it? Do our kids know that? I see you, ma'am, in the back. I see you, ma'am. I see you. I see you. Do our teachers know that distinction? Remember, it's not about curriculum instruction and assessment. I'm not correcting Laura when I say it's not about curriculum instruction and assessment. It's about common instructional knowledge. So that you can use the common instructional language and then have a common instructional expectation because you're giving teachers access to tools that they can use to get the job done. I told you I'm done. Give me the benediction. I'll keep my word here. If I had more time, I would do this stuff on Mac, but I don't have time. So let me pause here. I have 4 minutes. I want you to use this Harvard University protocol that I learned when I was at Harvard. And it's really simple. I used to think, but now I think. I used to think, but now I think. But someone next to you, have a quick conversation. Before this morning, I used to think blank, but now I think blank. Go for it. And then I have you share out a second. you switch to the, Jordan, would you switch to the grade 6 document for me? Okay, I'm going to show you one document that's consistent with what Scholastic is doing for the elementary grades, then you can see it in advance. And what Scholastic is doing for the 6th grade, I want you to see the implications for the upper grade. But before the gentleman puts it up, let me just talk to you a little bit about what you used to think and now what you think. Okay, I used to think, but now I think. Somebody throw one at me. I used to think, but now I think.
I used to think of some of those things about the writing types and text were solely ELA. Even though I knew the
Yes,
writing
ma'am.
was important to science and math and other content, I didn't realize that if we took a more unified approach, it could be extremely powerful.
Yep, and it could be accelerated too, my friend. Right? So if you take a systematic approach to teaching those 4 types of writing and those 6 ways that writing is structured in every content area, it's going to be like complex compound interest acting against underperformance. Okay? I used to think, but now I think. Give me another one, please. Yes, ma'am.
I used to think that addressing the literacy needs in the school was complex, and now I'm starting to see that it doesn't have to be.
Yes, ma'am. It's finite, actually. It's less complicated than most public educators think. Yes, ma'am. And there's a few little things that you can do to turn the course. I used to think, but now I think. Let me have 2 more. I just want to make sure I did my job. Yes, ma'am.
So I used to think that explicitly teaching your 30-30-30 was too isolated, but now I think that it is absolutely needed to get these kids to a literacy level. Where
Yeah.
they can stuff.
And teaching those word parts happens in the context of what kids are already going to be reading. So it's not saying, I'm going to go plan a separate lesson on word parts. No. It is, I'm getting ready to read a text in science. Let's look at the text and see if there are any words that are unfamiliar that we can use the 30-30-30 that makes sense of. I apologize for using the preposition at the end of that sentence. I know better. Okay? One more.
Yes.
I used to think, but now I think. Now, one more. I used to think, but now I think. No more? Okay. Sir, go to page 2 for me, please. And then I'll give you the definition because elementary is out there. Go ahead and slide down. Go ahead and slide for me. Okay, one more. Okay. One more down. One more page down. One more page down. One more page down. One more page down. Pick up. One more. Go to page 4, would you please? 4. Okay, stop right there. Stop right there. That's good enough. Now, let me show you what you need as a tool. What do you see at the top of that page? A standard. And these documents are created for all content areas for all grades. You talked about refining your curriculum. So I'm giving you a tip on what you should do when you refine your curriculum. This is an example. The standard's at the top of the page. When people read that standard, slide for me a little bit, young fella. You read that one sentence, but your teachers don't think that big paragraph. Remember I said you got to unpack it once and for all? Do you have a document that says that one sentence means all that stuff below it? Slide up for me. Slide up for me. I'm sorry, I really mean down when I say up. Okay, now, do you see those performance-based objectives? So for that standard, the objectives are already written in a performance-based way. Do you have time to teach teachers to write performance-based objectives? They're going to jump off the bridge. So I've done some writing for you so that if you're interested in embedding this in your curriculum, you can, okay? Go down up for me, young man. Do you see those terms? Where those terms come from? Those terms live inside of what? The standard. So there's one definition no matter what grade kids go to. Go up, down for me. Keep going. Keep going. Y'all see all those words? That could take a while to teach before you ever get to the I do. Go up, down for me. Do you see where it says complex text? Come. Now. There you go. You see where it says complex text? Teachers need to be able to click and the text opens. Click on the hyperlink and then the text will open. So they don't have to go looking for the text to teach the concept. Because when they start looking and they don't find, they don't teach it. You see that below? Now a graphic organizer for it that's written a line, not a lion. Written for the standard. Now go up, down for me. And then you see all those questions there. Those are the DOK questions that teachers sometimes don't know how to ask. They're already written. Y'all see it? Elastic is getting ready to do that for you for K-6 for literacy. And I've already done some of this work for the other content areas, all grades. Okay? Now, here's the benediction. Would you go back to the PowerPoint? There was a superintendent in Iowa. I'm closing. There's a superintendent in Iowa, and he had a boiler that went down, and the board was upset. They said, we told you to get this boiler fixed. You didn't get the boiler fixed. You didn't get the boiler fixed. So he says, I'm going to get the boiler fixed. But before he could get it fixed, it went down in the dead of winter. It went down in the dead of winter. And they were really upset with him. So he said, look, I'm going to get the boiler fixed. I'm going to call my buddy. And my buddy from Joe Boiler's Repair, he's going to help me with this boiler. So let me show you what Joe did. Joe went into the elementary school where the boiler was. He went down into the basement. He found the boiler. And he had a screwdriver, a hammer, and a flashlight. Screwdriver, hammer, and a flashlight on his utility belt. Joe pulled the hammer from his utility belt. He walked over to the boiler. He put his ear against the boiler. He noticed that there was a little rusty trail of water going through the pipe. He pulled the hammer again from his utility belt, and he hit the boiler in the center of it, and immediately the boiler came on. Crisis averted. Joe goes to the superintendent and said, Mr. Superintendent, I fixed your boiler. Here's your bill, $250. Superintendent said to Joe, I need you to itemize this bill. We're in tough times. People want to know. So Joe said to the superintendent, no problem, sir. It's $250, but you need me to itemize it? No problem. 85 cents wear and tear on my hammer. Remember, he used the hammer. And so the superintendent said to Joe, I need you to tell me more. The constituents, they want to know. I mean, for what did we pay? And so here's what Joe said to the superintendent. $249.15. Knowing where to hit the boiler. So you got a boiler, you got to hit. What's your boiler? Underperformance. You're not satisfied. Where do you hit the boiler? We made it more complicated than it has to be. It's an objective that's in 2 parts. It's academic language. It is gradual release or the 5 E's. And it is get them to write in a way that's consistent with how they're going to be assessed as it relates to writing. And watch your students exceed expectations. Not just subgroups, all groups. I'm out of time. Thank you.